Welcome back, Leanaholics. I'm your host, Dr. Luke. Today we're going to be talking about the PDCA, or Plan, Do, Check, Act cycles. Now, Plan, Do, Check, Act is really a great lean concept. What it does is it helps you to think through your solutioning. When you start experimenting on the solutions and you're going to do your proof of concept and then you're going to do your learning launch, well, the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle helps you experiment your way through to the best possible solution that you can come up with. Now, so think about Plan, Do, Check, Act this way. Every day you wake up, and I'm going to use a Washington, D.C. type example. In Washington, D.C., they have a highway called 95. I used to live by it. So long story short, this is a nightmare. Driving around anywhere around D.C. is an absolute nightmare. So you plan every morning to go to work. Let's say you got to drive 10 miles and you got to go down the 95 and get into Washington, D.C. Okay, so at night you go to bed, you set your alarm, you make your lunch the night before, so you're planning to be to work. And you set your alarm, we'll say, for 7. And then you get up and you hygiene, and you plan to get up, hygiene, make your coffee and all that type of stuff. So you planned out what was going to happen. And leaving at a certain time, you were going to leave at 7:40 to get there at 8 o'clock. Well, now you're going to do, so that was the plan. Now you do it. You get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, you execute that plan, and you get out at 7:40 on the dot, and you drive to work. And you realize, oh my gosh, I showed up at 8:30, so I plan, do, check. I check the results. What did I come up with? Well, I'm 30 minutes late for work. So that didn't work. So I'm obviously not going to adopt that plan. So then I have to go plan, do, check, and then act on those results. I need to come up with a new plan, right? I got to modify this thing. Am I going to modify my route? Probably not. Am I going to leave a little bit earlier? Probably. Okay, so now we're going to plan tomorrow to do something different. Maybe now this time we're going to set our alarm for 6:30. We're going to make our lunch. We're going to set our coffee on a timer, and we're going to, hygiene much quicker in the morning. Great. So we plan, do, check, act. And then we get to the point where we show up at 8 o'clock. Everything is great. And then we adopt that, right? So then that's how you go through those cycles over and over. So you use plan, do, check, act in your daily life. But when you're doing it with your solutions, you're doing the same thing. I'm going to plan on, we're going to try and run an experiment by removing the initials from this particular packet. And maybe we're going to, stop batching in batches of 20 going through and maybe just go one at a time. So we plan it. Then we actually do it. We experiment maybe on a small scale. Then we check the results. Did it work? Didn't it work? What did we like? What didn't we like? And we discuss those before we either put together another cycle or maybe we adopt that plan. And then you can build on these. So a tip in here that I always give to my classes is don't do more than 2. Say if you're going to change things, maybe I prefer you change one thing at a time. And that's so you can see how that variable impacts your outcome. Right? So how waking up itself impacts you getting to work on time. If you do all of the elements all at the same time when you're experimenting, it gets really hard to see which variable or variables are having the greatest impact on our outcome. And then furthermore, when we get to design of experiments, we'll talk about how you can actually see the interaction between the variables themselves on the impact of the outcome. But in plan, do, check, act, we also can't see that. So the easiest and sometimes best way, I get it's not always practical to do one at a time, but if you can, changing one thing at a time is generally going to be the best way to do a plan, do, check, act, just to see if I change this, then this is how it affects my outcome. And so it's just easier to see, easier to interpret the results, but just go ahead and do one at a time. I say try not to do more than 2, but I understand there's context. Okay, I hope this helps you getting closer to implementation on your solutions and conducting your PDCA. I hope to see you in the classroom.